And I think I want to welcome all of you now to this celebration of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which is celebrated once a year on 3rd of December, but we are moving us just before the 3rd. I think tomorrow is the 3rd. But CDPF has been, in the past 3 or so years, having a virtual celebration and bringing together all our organizations to just talk about the issues of disability rights and inclusion during this day. And we hope that our voices will continue being raised and heard, and actions are going to be implemented and taken by our governments to ensure that disability is, in essence, included in every aspect of development. So thank you so much for coming. I would like to just say that CDPF has 52 national umbrella bodies in 52 countries, and we have associates, 59 of them. And we are happy that we are growing year by year, and we hope to have as many members as possible as we go along. We have been doing well as we re-engaged ourselves from 2019, and the progress has been steady but sure. To celebrate this International Day, I would like to say that persons with disabilities comprise almost 1.3 billion people, according to the World Health Organization. And this means about 16% of the world population live with some form of disability. And then we have a theme for this year's International Day, which hinges around the building of inclusive systems and creating accessible communities. The broader message remains consistent. Societies must evolve so that every person, irrespective of disability, can fully participate in economic, social, and political life. And these themes are here to encourage governments through schools, workplaces, and public institutions to design or redesign systems that currently exclude disabled people. And it also invites the world to embrace accessibility as a universal need rather than a special requirement. So the key objectives for this International Day for this year are promoting accessibility in all spheres. I've talked about them earlier, and also challenging social stigma and stereotypes, which are still very entrenched in some of our cultures and some of our spaces. There's also the need for strengthening policies and legal frameworks and pushing for implementation of those policies that are put in place by the different governments so that we can achieve actualization and operationalization of those policies, and then recognizing the contributions of persons with disabilities and their organizations, because most of the time we find that people in the decision-making space make decisions on disability without having persons with disabilities on board. So these are the things we are rallying around, calling upon governments, calling upon development pastors to ensure that persons with disabilities are part of the decision-making so that they can be able to have their rights and their issues included during the discourse. I would like to share a little of my experience with participating during the Conference of State Parties, which is one of the annual conferences that normally happens, and most countries in the world participate during that time. And this is a place where discussions around impacts and actions about climate change are discussed, and the world and countries come together to discuss how they can take actions to mitigate against the impacts of climate change on different aspects of the environment, for example, the infrastructures, issues of accessibility, issues of loss and damage, issues of climate finance, among many other things that they discuss, gender, disaggregated data on how to ensure that when they are taking actions, climate actions, that all these aspects of society are brought into perspective so that those decisions can be all inclusive. I can say that it was a learning experience for me, trying to negotiate, trying to listen to what people are saying about inclusion and disability, which was very minimally talked about, because like I'm saying, all the negotiators are people without disabilities, but some understand disability issues, some don't, but they are the ones that represent those issues. So even the fact that persons with disabilities are not the ones who are talking about their issues makes a big difference, because it is not well understood. I can see there were challenges of basic accessibility issues, like sign language interpretation was not part of the communication that was used to discuss these actions, or even for the presidents when they are calling for these declarations and what the actions they are going to take. Persons who are hearing impaired were left out completely in the discourse, even if they were to go back and try to understand what this climate change and climate actions were, their space was not there. So I have realized that we have to keep fighting for some of these rights which we have been fighting for long, and they are still not yet taken up. And issues of accessibility, wheel ramps, and just having places where people can comfortably like rest if they have psychosocial disabilities and everything is becoming too much and they need to take a break back. There was no such provision there. So I think the fact we keep saying leaving no one behind, it's real that if we don't keep voicing our issues, we shall for sure be left behind, because our rights have not yet been embraced. And I think what we need to do is to ensure that we find our way into these legal spaces, into these protocols, so that we are the ones who are discussing, who are bringing our issues on board and are helping the discussions to take up what we require as actions, especially when it comes to climate change impacts. So let us continue fighting. Let us continue voicing our concerns, because in every space we find ourselves in, there is that need for us to be able to show our presence, and not just to be seen, but let us know our rights and then speak about them in confidence, knowing where we are hinging them on. So I want to thank all of you for coming to talk about our disability rights and disability issues in this International Day for 2025. And I'm looking forward to hearing what all of us have to say, what we have to do, and what actions we need to take forward from ourselves, what actions we need to push to our governments to do, so that as a one voice, we can together be able to bring implementation and actualization of disabilities in our countries, in every space that we happen to be in. And that will only come about when we speak about those rights from a knowledge, from a background that is sound, that we know what the rights are, and then we speak for them. Welcome so much, and I want from now to call upon our next speaker, who is our General Secretary, Dr. Richard Rieser, who will speak about some of the aspects we've been trying to ask for countries to adopt, and we've been pushing for the Disability Inclusion Action Plan for Commonwealth countries. I want to call upon Richard now to talk about that. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Sarah, who does a marvelous job in leading our organization. If you can put me onto the full view so people can see me. I'm not sure who's doing that.
We can all see you.
Can you? Oh, I can't see myself. That's all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe if you don't.
No, that's
Richard,
all right. As long as you can see me, that's fine.
I can pin you if you'd rather.
Maybe. It's just so I can see what I'm getting on the screen is there. Yeah, that's better. It stops me dropping my head, which is one of the
Yes,
things
yes,
that you
yes. I wanted to tell
me
you.
about.
I'm
Okay.
also
I'd like to wish everybody a great Disabled People's Day. I think it's really important that we keep our organisation and our struggle. We have seen over the last year, particularly, that we've been moved back internationally, as we spoke about at our AGM when we passed a resolution on that back in March. 134 countries had their cutbacks on their aid because of US aid being cut as a result of the presidential election. And since then, we've seen major attacks on inclusion, diversity, and equality. And that continues, and it continues not just in America, but around the world, and particularly attacks on women's rights, LGBT rights, but also on disabled people's rights. And so we really have a huge battle on our hands to stop our governments falling into this move backwards that's going on. They have all, apart from Tonga, and we hope they'll sign this year, ratified the UNCRPD, all 55 countries. So if you're not Tonga, then your country is bound to be implementing the UNCRPD in the Commonwealth. However, what we found, and we started seeing this when we went to Rwanda as a group in 2022 and onwards, and as our chair has just seen in Brazil, it is not common for, even though the UN says it is, to provide alternative means of communication for people so everybody can be part of the discussion. That is certainly not something that happens in the Commonwealth. It doesn't happen at law ministers' meetings, which are coming up, or any other ministers' meetings. It doesn't happen at a whole range of meetings. So as a result of that, we started pushing 2.5 years ago to get some sort of action plan or agreement of all the state parties, that they wouldn't just sign something and leave it to gather dust on the shelves, but they would actually come up with an action plan and collaborate and help each other to move forward to make reality of the rights for the 450 odd million disabled people who live in our Commonwealth countries. Some countries have done better than others, but by and large, over half are not doing very well. And nobody is doing perfectly or as they should be doing. So we think the Disability Inclusion Action Plan is very important. We took this to the Heads of Government meeting, which is called CHOGM in Samoa in 24, in the autumn of Samoa. It didn't get through. There were blocks put on at the Foreign Ministers meeting. And in their directive that they issued afterwards, communique, the heads of government said they welcomed the work we were doing on this and hoped we would do further, and set up a representative group of state parties and an advisory group. Now, we have those two, and we have been meeting largely, I have to say, due to pressure from Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, pushing. It took 6 months after the meeting in Samoa to get the first meeting, but we have had meetings. The EWG, which is the group of states, has 17 member states now. This has been up to each state whether to join. It's chaired by Canada and co-chaired by Eswatini. Prominent members on that are the UK, Canada, New Zealand, but also the Bahamas, and other members who don't play such an active part are Trinidad and Tobago, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, and a range of other countries, Malta. We would urge people to put pressure on their governments to make sure their representatives go to the next meeting, which is on the 9th of December. That's important because I'll explain why. We're hoping to get a draft that's agreed to come out and go through various processes so that it can actually be agreed in Antigua, which is the next heads of government meeting in the first week of November 2026. You have to work a long way ahead if you want to achieve these things. What has happened is we produced 2 drafts, and the second draft was looked at and then changed by the Commonwealth so that it would include or exclude a number of the things we wanted. But we then argued that really they couldn't just do this on their own. We needed an independent person, and they did employ Professor Anna Lawson, who's a blind lawyer, professor of law from Leeds University, well respected around the world, and she has been working on producing drafts. We put in a whole series of amendments, and some of those got through. We then had the first draft from her, and we've now put in 14 more amendments to try and bring it back to some of the things. Obviously, we won't get everything in there, but if we have this and it's agreed, it will move things forward considerably. And so we're hoping that that will largely be agreed. We have put forward a representative group for the advisory group. There is someone from Jamaica, Floyd Morris, someone from Fiji, Seta Makanani. We have Rachel Chomba from Zambia. We have Abia Akram from Pakistan. We have our chair, Sarah, on there, and myself. And we hope to be able to do that. The Canadians, as the chairs, have added 2 of their own who we thought would be a problem, but actually ex-minister Qualtrough is very much on our side and is a Paralympian, so a disabled person, and Heather Walkus, who chairs their umbrella organisation. So we now have 8 on the advisory group, plus from the Youth Network, which is not our network, but another one, CCYDN, they also have some places. Whatever the reason and how people have come there, we hope we can reach agreement on the 9th of December and move forward. Why? Because we are going, myself and Scader, who you'll hear from in a minute, as our treasurer, are going to Fiji again in February for the law ministers meeting, and there will be some discussion at that meeting of whether all the countries can work with this. What's important for us as CDPF is not to get everything right, but to get things moving. It will be 20 years next year since the UNCRPD came into being, and we really haven't got the momentum that we need in our countries, particularly on getting reasonable accommodations, on getting law changes. Half of the countries haven't got it. We'll be hearing from another of our vice chairs, Kerryann, on how in Barbados they managed to change the law, and I think it's a model for many of us to do this. We have much to do. What do we hope to do from this? Well, I mentioned the next CHOGM in Antigua. We have been holding trainings in the Caribbean, as you'll hear later. We're hoping that some of those young people and some also of our state representatives will come to CHOGM. We will have limited funds. We're hoping to get some more from the Caribbean Development Bank to get people there. But please, if you want to be there, particularly from your national DPOs, approach your government now, the Foreign Service, the Foreign Office, the Foreign Minister, and say you would like to be part of the delegation to go to CHOGM. Because keeping our fingers crossed, if that is, if what we're hoping happens, it will be a historic occasion for disabled people in the Commonwealth, in that we will get our Disability Inclusion Action Plan agreed by the states there. Other people have other agendas, and that is always the case. So that, for instance, the National Global Movement to Prevent Blindness has been lobbying the King Charles, and he's favourable to them having a meeting. So they will be talking about prevention of impairment. We have on purpose, as part of the UNCRPD, we have not talked about prevention of impairment, in that we've talked about rehabilitation for those people who get impairments. But of course, there is a role for prevention of impairments, but it's not really part of disability rights, because those people who are being prevented from getting the impairment are not disabled people as yet. And of course, we are in favour of minimising the number of people who acquire impairments in their lives. But as we know from history and also from what we see around us, there is no diminution in the number of disabled people. In fact, there's a growth in the number of disabled people as society goes forward. And so we will always need these rights, and we will also always need to be our own advocates. Nobody should speak with us, for us. We have had thousands of years of history of people dismissing us and then treating us objects of charity or pity. No, we are people in our own right, and we deserve to have the barriers removed and opportunities provided on a level playing field, which certainly doesn't exist anywhere within the Commonwealth. So we have much to do, but please do try and get yourself, if you're interested, to Antigua, paid for by your government. We will also be getting grant to try and send people to that. We're hoping with the Antiguan government to run a day where we look at the state of disability rights across the Commonwealth. That may not be part of the official CHOGM proceedings, but it will take place around it. And there will be items in the People's Forum, the Youth Forum, and the Women's and Business Forum that we are lobbying for. So there is every opportunity to go. And if you want to be part of any of those forums, you need to write to the Commonwealth Foundation to get yourself put forward. The Business Forum is slightly different. Contact me if you want to be at that. We are particularly looking for people with expertise in running the cooperatives, which we see as a way forward, but also on working with multinational companies to get a higher profile of disabled employees. Those are the two things we're going to raise there. So there are lots of issues for us to raise, and I'll stop there so we can go on and hear some of the detail from other members of our executive. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard, for that elaborate, explicit overview or detail of where we are at, especially on the Disability Inclusion Action Plan. And like we say, we have to continue pushing and advocating for our rights because we have seen that it is not obvious. We have to keep asking, we have to keep talking until the cows come home, if at all. I want to invite our next speaker for this day, and she is Dr. Sruti Mopsatrara from India, who has also been very instrumental in having some of the policies that we have in place. And she's been leading a team on sustainable development goals and how we need, as disabled people and our organizations, to come together and find out what is happening on the SDG achievements, and how we can also push our governments to catalyze the speed at which they are progressing with the achievement of sustainable development goals, which are supposed to have an end period of 2030, and that's like 4 years coming. So let's hear from Dr. Sruti. If she's not here, I think she had even done a video, but welcome, Dr. Sruti, now. Over to you.
Delegates of the Commonwealth, friends and fellow advocates, Namaste from India. Today, as we mark the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, there is a profound reality that hits us. Are people with disabilities a part of the development process? Can development be called development when the disabled are excluded? And can the Sustainable Development Goals be achieved, the world's most ambitious blueprint of equity and progress, if 16% of the population, that is the disabled, live on the margins? I speak today not as the Vice Chair of Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, not as the founder and head of Swamiman from India, but as a woman with more than 3 decades of lived-in experience of exclusion, isolation, and discrimination. How is exclusion created? Not by being born with a disability, nor also acquiring disability at a later stage of life, but exclusion is born out of designs, by inaccessible systems in place, by unchanging attitudes of people, and by development processes which do not consider including the disabled. One profound philosophy is forgotten here. Inclusion is not charity. Inclusion is not an afterthought. Inclusion is about establishing human rights. The Commonwealth represents 1/3 of the world's population. Our diversity is our greatest strength, but it also gives us a responsibility to demonstrate a disability inclusive development model, not just in theory, but in measurable action. That is why CDPF, Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, exists to bring together all people with disabilities from all across the Commonwealth countries to speak in one collective voice. Let us ground this conversation in facts. In 2024, United Nations has come up with the Disability and Development Report, the findings of the achievement of various SDGs as far as disability is concerned. Let us look at SDG 3, ensuring healthy lives. More than 50% of persons with disability do not receive health care because they cannot afford it. More than 58% of healthcare institutions are not accessible. Public health campaigns do not reach them. So the concept of universal health coverage is a myth when it comes to the disabled. SDG 4, quality education. Even today, many children with disabilities do not have access to education. However, there is a good news. Now, almost every country has a law to ensure equal access at all levels of education. But there are inadequate facilities. The report states less than half of the primary schools have disability adapted infrastructure. Then there is skills gap. Teachers are not trained. Books and reading material is not available. SDG 5, achieving gender equality. The report paints a grim picture showing women and girls with disabilities face multiple or aggravated forms of discrimination. They suffer sexual violence and experience early marriage. They appear to be engaged mostly in unpaid work and often do not reach the leadership roles. SDG Goal 8, promoting full and productive employment and decent work. The unemployment rate for persons with disabilities is much higher. Youth with disabilities are twice as likely as youth without disabilities to not be employed. They face lower wages and overrepresentation in the informal economy and in self-employment. SDG 11, making cities accessible and sustainable. Urban infrastructure and public transport system in developing countries is completely inaccessible, and in the developed countries lacks universal design. Rapid urbanization is creating a lot of informal settlements who lack accessibility completely. Yes, a note to smile. Wheelchair access is increasing everywhere. SDG 13, climate action. People with disabilities often experience twice as high mortality rates as compared to other people during a disaster. Most of the time, early warning systems do not reach the disabled, especially those with visual or hearing impairment. Cyclone shelters are mostly inaccessible. There is low participation of persons with disabilities in national climate policy forums. Climate financing rarely earmarks funds for inclusive disaster resilience programs. There is lack of systematic disability disaggregated disaster impact data. Excellencies, delegates and friends, let us be honest to ourselves. At this rate, the Sustainable Development Goals will not be achieved for persons with disabilities. Not by 2030, not without a course correction, not without a political will which is backed by financial commitment. So together, let us embrace accessibility and keep it in every planning stage and not as an afterthought. Let us treat assistive technology as essential, not optional. Let's put data at the center. What is not counted is always ignored. And let us increase the disability budgets. Namaste.
Thank you very much for highlighting the the plight behind the Sustainable Development Goals and their impacts on disability inclusion and disability rights and what we need to do. I think I cannot say more than what Dr. Sruti has said, and I want to thank her so much for that. We'll now go to our next speaker, who is also Vice Chair, Kerryann Ifill, who will talk on the processes of getting law on statute book to implement UNCRPD. Welcome, Kerryann Ifill. I think she's live.
Settings. Open participants panel. Closed. 25 participants. Audio settings button. Mute. Currently.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Are you seeing me clearly? Yes? No?
Kerryann,
Yes.
we're hearing you. We're hearing you, Kerryann. Good morning.
Okay, but are you seeing me? Is the
Yes,
question.
I can't see you because I never see.
I can see you, Kerryann.
Okay, good. Right.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My area of focus today is going to be how to move promise to policy and from legislation to from lip service to legislation. This is what we've been able to achieve in Barbados with the recent passage of our Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act in January of 2025, and with our national policy, which was moved in Parliament and adopted in October of 2024. This was achieved after we had ratified the convention in 2013. Took us a number of years to reach here, but how were we able to get here eventually? It started moving forward momentously in 2022 with the appointment of the National Committee to Improve the Lives of Persons with Disabilities, whose direct mandate was to establish the policy and to present government with draft legislation for approval in Parliament. This undertook 9 months of arduous work. We achieved it through the following. We appointed a committee which was comprised of 8 persons, 4 of whom were persons with disabilities, and the other 4 were relatives or persons who worked closely with the disabled community. This meant that all 8 members had lived experience of disabilities and not coming from a theoretical perspective, but practical real-life situations. Following on from that, we established at least 70 meetings, virtually and in person. First, we met with the organizations of persons with disabilities. How can we establish a policy? How can we implement legislation without hearing from the organized disabilities movement? They were frank, they were honest, they were open, they were focused in their discussions and deliberations. We heard from international and regional partners who attended some of these meetings. We set up town hall meetings where the larger public was invited to share their lived experiences on disabilities. We moved towards meetings with government, private sector, and NGO, or as we call them, the third sector. These meetings focused on varieties of topics. In tandem with this, the government had established a law reform commission who was addressing the gaps in legislation generally. They engaged the services of the then Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of the West Indies, Ifill campus, who has now moved on to a different posting internationally. He drafted the legislation, which was then presented to our committee, where we pulled it apart, revisited, revised, and returned it. We shared it widely with the public. And then, as I mentioned, we engaged in several meetings. We met with every government ministry and substantive departments within those ministries, inviting them to share what they felt, how they proposed to move forward in inclusion. We didn't entertain discussions on why it's not going to work. We wanted them to offer suggestions, and we came up with solutions. We met with the private sector. As we all appreciate, unless we have employment, persons with disabilities remain limited and at the lowest strata of society. In meeting with private sector, we addressed employment. We spoke about accessibility. We came to the discussions informed, aware, and ready with armed information. We spoke to landlords about why discrimination could no longer and would no longer be permitted. In addition to this, we met with third sector, the larger third sector, apart from the OPDs, DPOs, whichever terminology we chose. We met with the trade unions. We established meetings with the civil society, political parties, everyone who would have a vested interest. At the end of it all, we engaged a consultant to draft the policy, and they produced a 10-point strategy paper addressing all the various needs and areas of concern for persons with disabilities, proposing short, mid, and long-term implementation strategies that the government committed to from 2023 to 2030. Subsequent to all of this activity, we presented the government with both the legislation and the policy, which then the Prime Minister took, and with her cabinet, returned it to the public for further town halls and consultation, which then informed the eventual outcomes. What has happened since then? At the same time, the country was involved in a constitutional reform process. I had the privilege to serve on the 10-man team representing the interests of persons with disabilities and a larger community of persons. In addition, so at those meetings, at the town halls, we engaged again and ensured that in our draft legislation, our proposed constitution, and our report, we expanded the rights and freedoms to include non-discrimination against persons on the grounds of disability. While the Constitution has not yet been adopted, we made it very clear how we felt, and therefore it is anticipated that there will be no challenge towards inclusion of disability in the eventual outcomes of the Constitution. Buttressing all of this work, the government led by implementing the post of National Disabilities Advocates, posts held by two legally trained persons with disabilities. One, an attorney at law called to the bar, and the other, a legal consultant who is a member of the Senate of Barbados. Together, these two individuals, one male, one female, have conducted workshops, trainings, and engaged with government institutions on how to go about implementing the policy. Policy and legislation mean nothing if they are not supported by meaningful implementation. And we continue to engage with the public, with the organizations of persons with disabilities. 2 weeks ago, Barbados hosted its first meeting regarding the report, eventually to go into the UNCRPD with our country report. To summarize, none of this could be achieved without all hands on deck, without persons with disabilities leading the charge. We often say nothing about us without us. But through the process of legislation, policy, constitutional reform, public consultation, I venture to say nothing without us. Happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities as we foster inclusion in our societies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very, very informative and encouraging for most of us to push our governments to stop giving us promises and lip services, but to really deliver on the promises to really deliver on what rights needs to be brought for persons with disabilities to live in the same space with others and to enjoy the society, on an equal basis with others. Thank you so much, Kerryann. And we are encouraged to keep pushing, to keep going and fight for these rights as much as we can. I would like to call upon Dr. Emile Gouws. Dr. Emile Gouws works with neurodiverse persons who some have learning difficulties, especially non-verbal. And he has been an advocate of that space in South Africa. He's one of our representatives in the executive, and I would like to welcome Emile to now take the floor. Welcome, Emile. We can't hear you, but you can see, oh, it's a video.
Good day, Commonwealth leaders, friends, politicians, fellow self-advocates. My name is Dr. Emile Gouws. I am the representative of underrepresented groups on the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum from South Africa. And today I bring you something very special, the real voices of neurodivergent people across our Commonwealth. In a few moments you will meet non-speaking autistic adults who use AIC, young people and adults with Down syndrome, dyslexic self-advocates, and many more. They formed these thought messages themselves on phones, in their homes, and in their own words. This is the first time in the Commonwealth history that neurodivergent people are speaking directly to leaders like you, not through reports, not through parents or professionals, but with their own voice. Why do this matter? Because when you plan education, health, employment, and justice policies, these are the citizens you are planning for. Their happiness, their rights, and their futures depend on the decisions made in rooms like this. So please listen carefully, watch with open hearts, and remember, nothing about this without us. Thank you for giving us this historic platform. Now, let the voices begin. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Antigua Joshua. I am a neurodiversity advocate and a special education specialist in Nigeria. I advocate for neurodiversity in Africa. It's my pleasure to be at the Commonwealth Roundtable event happening at this time. Every year we celebrate International Day of People with Disability, and also in April we always celebrate World Autism Awareness Day. So it's a good time to be rounding up the year with awareness. I want to really appreciate Dr. Emile Gouws for the opportunity to be presenting this. I'll be talking from my own personal experience, how I conquered, should I say conquered? But let me just say, how I increase my strength, where my strength lies, and how I did not allow my environment to dictate what I can do. While growing up, I experienced one of the specific learning disability called dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is one of the specific learning disability. And talking about learning disabilities, those are the difficulties one experiences through learning. We have dyslexia, we have dyscalculia, we have dysorthography. And dyscalculia I'm talking about is what I experienced personally. And if you are raised in Africa, it's very, very different as a war. Because your parents, your teachers, they don't understand most of this condition. They don't. what they are after is results. 2 plus 2, 4. 3 plus 3, 6. So any little mistake in giving a wrong number, you are getting lashes, and you can result to a slap. So while growing up, as I was enrolled in school, my parents enrolled me in school. As I was growing, as I was doing the subject, I noticed quite well that I did not perform well in maths. My dad saw this, my brother saw this too, my siblings, they saw this. I'm from the family of 3, right? I have an older brother and I have a younger brother. I'm in the middle. But it's just that I'm the one that doesn't know maths out of them. I was not thinking the first one knows maths very well. It's the last born, which is the third born, knows maths very well. But why me? God has a plan. Yeah. And because he's our creator, definitely he can deliver anyone, and definitely he can support anyone. God can support, God creates. And everything God created, it's good. So as I was growing up, I did not get the necessary support from the environment. I did not. Even from my teachers. Rather, they traumatize and make me to have anxiety for maths the more. Now, if arithmetic questions were placed in front of me, I always look at my savior, and then what I mean by my savior is my brothers. Whenever they give me a calculation, maybe at home, my dad is working with me and he's saying, okay, 2 plus 2. I'll be looking at my brother in one corner. My brother would have staged himself in one corner to whisper the answer. So I'll just look at him with one eye, with one side of my eye. If my dad asks 2 plus 2, my brother will be there to say 4, 4, 4. So I will be reading his lip. I'll say 4. Okay, so you get that. My dad did not notice. So along the line, when I get to school, it becomes more challenging. The teachers start reinforcing us with cane, a big one. Any little mistake in getting inconsistent answers, you are getting lashes. So this makes the anxiety problem to get worse.
Spelling on this letterboard. Has opened up. The world for me.
Across the Commonwealth, millions live without access to their own voices. This is the story of one young man who found his voice in a different way. Zekwande is a non-speaking autistic young man from South Africa. Though he does not speak with his mouth, his mind has always been alive, intelligent, and powerful. Given the spelling boards, a lot of time and practice, he now is free from his silent jail. Non-speaking autism is not a lack of intelligence. It's a motor communication disability, a disconnect between a capable mind and a body that doesn't always cooperate. When we misunderstand non-speaking people, we risk silencing brilliant individuals. One of the greatest things people can give is respect to others. It opens so many possibilities for Zekwande. Please treat us with respect. Our intelligence is real, we just need support to show it. Believe in us, and we will rise. I, and others like me, are eagerly waiting to communicate with the world. Non-speaking people across the Commonwealth deserve dignity, access to communication, and every opportunity to succeed. Let us build a world where every voice is heard, spoken, spelled, signed or typed. Thank you for your time and your attention.
My whole life I was told the word no. Carly, no, you will never be able to make friends. Carly, no, you will never be able to communicate. But I loved using my voice, even when I was the only one in the world who could hear it. But autism locked mine inside a body I cannot control. I knew my voice was smart, even though the doctors told my parents I'd never speak. Because I couldn't speak, they thought I didn't have anything to say. Until I found a way for my voice to be heard. It might take me longer, and it might make me have to think outside of the box, but I always accomplish what I set out to. My name is Carly Fleischman, and I'm going to use the power of my voice to become the world's first autistic and nonverbal television talk show host. I would like to introduce you to my next guest, James Van Der Beek. Did women ever turn you down because they thought you were younger than your actual age because of your character?
That's a very good question. No.
I have one important question to ask you. Will you be my BFF? I never hog the sheets. Unless Aston Kutcher is beside me naked, then I'll make sure to hog all of the sheets. Beth, it has been an honor and a pleasure to interview you, but please tell Kat she was my first choice.
My name is Sruti Breinhardt. I stand here as a proud person with Down syndrome who has worked a difficult road of inclusivity in South Africa. Because I was included in a mainstream school, I found my voice, and now I use that voice to help persons with disabilities be seen, heard, and valued. When I was born 43 years ago, doctors advised my parents to place me in an institution. Many believed I would never contribute in society, but my parents chose to believe in me. They raised me inclusively, and that changed my life. After many appeals, I was admitted to a mainstream school on the condition that I kept up with my peers. I was the only learner with an intellectual disability in the school. The principal even warned my parents that I would give his school a bad name. At first, I was mocked, but in time I made friends. There were no assistants, no curriculum changes, and very little special support. I failed at times, but I never gave up. When I passed grade 12, I did not know that I was the first person in South Africa with Down syndrome to do so. Inclusive opportunities allowed me to become the only person with an intellectual disability in South Africa to earn an E6 diploma as a qualified assistant teacher and to receive the Presidential Award for changing perceptions about persons with disabilities. Today, I'm a qualified assistant teacher with 16 years.
Yeah, that's very, very inclusive. When we see self-advocates in the spaces that they have struggled, they have barriers on. And that is the encouragement that we'd like to give to everyone, that let us continue advocating for ourselves. Let us continue being seen, having a voice to show the world that we can speak even without talking, that there's a way that we can express ourselves and we know what we need. And that's very, very, very touching. We'll go now next to our youth representative, Mr. Kihembo Wilpert, who is also non-verbal and has a lot of technical expertise when it comes to IT, information technology expertise and specialism. I would like to welcome Kihembo to talk to us concerning the work that the Commonwealth Disabled People Forum has done, especially on the Youth Forum. Welcome, Kihembo.
Good morning, good afternoon, and warm greetings to everyone. Happy International Day for People with Disabilities. My name is Kihembo Wilpert from Uganda, serving as the Youth Officer for the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum. I have had the privilege to help shape and coordinate our youth platform, now known as the Commonwealth Disabled Youth Forum. This community has grown into a vibrant network of more than 166 young people with disabilities from across the Commonwealth, each carrying talent, ambition, and a desire to lead. Yet many of these young people continue to face social, economic, and physical barriers that threaten to silence their potential. In October, we launched a capacity building webinar series designed to equip young disabled advocates with the knowledge, confidence, and tools they need to stay safe, informed, and effective in their activism. These sessions are also a space for connection. They remind us that young people with disabilities are eager to contribute, eager to learn, and ready to lead when they are given the right opportunities. Our first two sessions in October and November brought together over 157 participants who shared insights, lived experiences, and strategies that continue to shape our collective path. CDPF remains committed to building an inclusive Commonwealth where disabled youth feel seen, supported, and empowered. Next year, we plan to take a bigger step by fundraising for a youth grant-making program that will support youth-led initiatives across our network. Our hope is to fuel ideas, create opportunities, and sustain leadership journeys that are already beginning to transform communities. In Uganda, through Empress International Foundation, I coordinate the Leave No Learner Behind project. This is a youth-driven model rooted in gender equality and inclusion, created by young people with disabilities for young people with disabilities. We run inclusion workshops with teachers and students in our partner schools, helping to shift mindsets and strengthen practices that make the school environment welcoming for every learner. When models like this take root, they do more than improve access. They reshape entire systems into spaces of belonging. Today is a reminder that we are not leaders in the future. We are leaders right now. Our voices matter, our innovations matter, and our commitment to building a fair and inclusive world will continue to shape the societies we want to live in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Kihembo, for letting us know that we keep saying that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, that they are the leaders of today. And that capacity building for disability inclusion, disability rights will really make sure that persons with disabilities are having the knowledge and the skills that they require to be able to lead even now as they move to the future. Thank you so much. And we now want to go to our next presenter, who is our representative in the executive of CDPF as the treasurer. That is Scader Louis from Malawi. And she's going to speak about expenditure on disability in state budgets and how these are being done and monitored, because we are sure that there's nothing that we can be able to achieve without funding, without money. How our governments putting their mouth in putting what they're saying and putting money against what they're saying, so that disability inclusion can be achieved. Do they have even the data to know who to spend on and what to spend on? So I want to call upon Scader Louis to take the floor. Scader, welcome.
We have a film from her.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. My name is Scader Louis. I'm from Malawi. I'm the Treasurer General of CDPF. I'll be presenting on assessing funding for disability in national budgets. Across the Commonwealth, countries have made strong commitments to disability inclusion through national disability laws, development plans, and ambitious plans that they have, and ratifying the UNCRPD. Yet the real test of those commitments lies in how they are financed. So at CDPF, we continue to see a troubling pattern. That's a comparison between the disability prevalence within the Commonwealth, which is around 10 to 15% per country. But looking at the budget provisions for disability, we notice that the allocations remain small, fragmented, or they are completely absent. So many promising legal reforms that countries have made have remained underfunded. In some cases, disability financing depends heavily on development partners, making it unpredictable and limiting long-term implementation. At the same time, we are also observing that mainstream ministries in most countries like education, transport ministries, employment, social protection do not often budget for disability inclusion, though the CRPD requires it. So a national budget is a reflection of a government's priorities and a mirror of who is seen, valued, and included. For many disabled people across member states, the budget is where exclusion becomes visible. It shows whether governments are investing in assistive devices, accessible infrastructure, inclusive education, health services, employment pathways, digitalization, and social protection, just to mention but a few. It shows whether disability-related costs are recognized, whether national disability strategies are costed, and whether commitments translate into action. So this presentation will look at what this means for our movement. It further highlights why accessing disability financing is essential, and what we are learning from the Commonwealth and the role DPOs can play. So what is a national budget? A national budget is a country's annual financial plan that outlines how public resources will be raised and allocated. Like I have said, it reflects government's priorities, political commitments, and the value placed on different groups in the society. For disabled people, the budget is the clearest indicator of whether inclusion is truly prioritized beyond policy statements. It is not just about numbers, it is a statement of justice. If disability is missing, it signals exclusion. So across the Commonwealth, we realize that disabled people are not fully involved in assessing budget due to different reasons, owing maybe to capacities to conduct credible assessments. But it is important that disabled people are fully involved and DPOs are fully involved in assessing budgets and whether disability is included. Why? Because disabled people are taxpayers and they are contributing to the gross development, the GDP for their country. And also they use it as an advocacy tool to challenge allocations that perpetuate exclusion and discrimination, to confirm whether commitments in legislation are also aligned to the budget, and for the DPOs to advocate from an evidence point of view, realistic and predictable funding that they need. How do we assess funding for disability? So we can track explicit disability budget lines within the national budget, identify allocations that are coming from mainstream ministries like inclusive education, accessible infrastructure, compare the allocations with the disability prevalence, and assess budget execution rates. In terms of some of the misconceptions that we have as a community when it comes to budgeting, laws and policies guarantee funding. That is not always the case. A country can ratify a convention and not provide resources for its domestication and also implementation. We also think that budget allocations equal actual spending. This is often not the case because a budget can be cut, can be delayed, or can be reallocated. So monitoring and tracking is very important. Disability is only funded through social protection. This is also a misconception because disability is supposed to be budgeted in all the sectors across the implementation. So what role can DPOs play in the disability movement? So DPOs can play a central role in monitoring budget commitments, identifying gaps, and demanding accountability. DPOs can also generate evidence on real cost of disability and service needs. DPOs can also advocate for ring-fenced resources, costed action plans, and stronger budget participation processes. DPOs can also ensure that governments hear directly from persons with disabilities themselves. So beyond assessing, what do we need to do? So beyond assessing, we need to push for costed national disability strategies tied directly to the budget process. We also need to strengthen collaboration with mainstream civil society, budget collisions, and social protection networks. We also need to advocate for integration of disability into major sectors, not as an add-on or after fact, but as part of core planning. We also need to call for transparent reporting on disability expenditure and also promote domestic resource mobilization so countries can rely less on external funding or funding from development partners, which is unpredictable. We also need to build the capacity of DPOs to engage confidently in budget analysis and public finance processes, because often people view budgeting from an angle of figures and difficulty. So you can refer to my presentation, which will be posted on our page. In there, I've included a practical example of how you can conduct an assessment for a budget. I've used the Malawi as an example of the budget. So how you can scan the budget for any allocation specifically labeled for disability, how you can go further to check budget provisions for disability in mainstream budgets, how you can compare allocations to disability prevalence, and how you can match the budget against legal commitments, and how you can check if your budget that the country is presenting or the parliament or whatever assembly house is called in your country. You can also check donor dependence, and also you can check participation, effective and meaningful participation of DPOs in the budget process. So please go through that presentation on our page and appreciate how this process can be done practically. My final reflection is that assessing disability funding is not only a technical exercise, it is a rights-based accountability too. It reviews whether our governments truly recognize disabled people as equal citizens. As CDPF, we must continue pushing for realistic, sustained, and inclusive budget investments that match our population size, our legal rights, and our vision for full participation across the Commonwealth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that insight on that. Planning for disability should not be an afterthought, because when it is done as an afterthought, it looks like an expenditure. while it is supposed to be an investment because disabled people also contribute to the GDP and the taxes in our countries, and therefore should be able to be allocated some funding for them to be able to fit in society, and their rights provided and their barriers removed, because they are also equal citizens with everybody else. So thank you, Scader, for that. I want to call upon our next speaker, who is Patience Ogulu Dickson from Nigeria. And Patience will talk about developing climate emergency responses, the experience of Nigeria, and any other experience that she will speak about. So Patience, please take the floor.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak at this global event on climate change. My submission is centered around disability inclusion in climate action, amplifying voices, building resilience, as it's the context in Nigeria. Our organization, Advocacy for Women with Disability Initiatives, is a women-led organization of women with disabilities in Nigeria, dedicated to advancing the rights, inclusion, and empowerment of women and girls with disabilities. AUD works at the intersection of gender, disability, and climate justice, ensuring that environmental policies and climate actions are inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. Our climate-focused inclusion includes, we promote disability-inclusive climate action through inclusive climate governance, engaging women with disability in national and community level climate decision making. Capacity strengthening, training women and OPDs on climate adaptation, green skills, and advocacy for inclusive climate justice. Accessible climate communication, promoting inclusive early warning system and climate information accessible to all disability type. Policy influence, collaborating with government agencies, OPDs or DPOs, and development partners to embed disability perspective into national climate policies and plans. Our work have also centered around some key achievements and partnerships, which includes the Disability Rights Fund and Global Green Grants Funds has also supported us, amplifying our initiatives. For instance, AUD supported grassroots advocacy for the mainstreaming of disability in climate and environmental policies, building the leadership capacity of women-led OPDs to engage in climate governance and resilience planning, implemented initiatives empowering women with disabilities in policy making, contribution, and facilitated inclusive dialogue linking climate justice to women's and disability resilience. In terms of gathering of data and research documentation, AUD was able to engage over 10 climate-related government ministries and agencies at the national levels with the aim of assessing climate change inclusive policies, identifying gaps, and make our existing resources and support mechanism for women and girls with disability in mitigating climate change impacts. We have also provided insights for tailored interventions and recommendations. And then we came up with a research document that highlights some of the gaps and also some findings. Some of the findings include most of the policies recognize gender perspective, but disability is excluded. Women with disability are entirely excluded from the framework on gender action plan for most agencies. Although women and girls with disabilities are the worst hit during emergencies, they recognize that there is no safety, security, or mitigation for them within the policies. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture has a gender policy that integrates women and girls with disabilities in Nigeria in mitigating climate change intervention as an integral part of the policy. Very good. Emergency preparation plans are done without including persons with disability in the plans. Disability issues are not recognized as right-based issue, but rather based on charity. So we have also done some work around policy engagement and stakeholder local collaborations. And that includes, as a result of the findings that I have just shared above, Advocacy for Women with Disability Initiative has convened forums bringing together policymakers, OPDs, civil society, and the private sector to advance inclusive environmental action that includes disability. We have also strengthened collaboration among OPDs and gender networks to advocate for climate inclusion at local and national levels. In the course of our work as regards climate change, we have also trained over 500 women with disabilities across disability status in Nigeria on climate leadership, advocacy, and adaptation strategies. Our call to action here as Advocacy for Women with Disability and as also a member of CDPF, the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, is to integrate disability inclusion as a core pillar of global climate policy and climate finance frameworks. Secondly, to ensure accessibility and equity in climate adaptation resources, reaching women and the overall persons with disabilities at the grassroots and community level. And thirdly, foster global partnership to promote inclusive climate governance, climate financing, knowledge sharing, and cross-regional collaboration. I thank you so much for listening, and I wish us all a fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patience. Yeah, we have a very key role to play when it comes to climate actions as disabled people. And like I shared earlier, having come from the recent Conference of Parties that discusses climate actions, among many other things, climate financing, our voices need to be part and parcel of the decisions that are made at that point, and we should strive and find our way into that space of being decision makers. Next is Clare Gabellini from Australia. She is also our executive committee member in the CDPF governance structure, and she's going to talk on developing policy on sexuality, disability, and LGBT with regards to how this affects disabled people. Welcome, Claire. The floor is yours.
Hi everybody, my name is Clare Gabellini. I'm a member of the executive of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum. I'm from Australia. I am a woman with short grey hair, I'm white, I have dark glasses and an olive green shirt on. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the key issues for LGBT persons with disabilities across all of the Commonwealth countries and why it's so important that we include LGBT persons with disabilities in policy and in the discussions that we're having around the implementation of the CRPD. For context, the intersection of LGBT identity and disability creates a very unique set of challenges that quite often are overlooked in policy and advocacy efforts. Individuals who belong to both groups experience compounded discrimination as they navigate different structures in society, structures that we know are frequently designed without consideration for their needs. In many Commonwealth countries, the challenges are amplified by our diverse legal frameworks, through cultural norms and through economic disparities. When we're talking about intersectionality, we're referring to the way that multiply marginalised identities interact to produce distinct experiences of oppression. For LGBT persons with disabilities, this means facing barriers in healthcare and education, employment and social participation, that stem from both homophobia and ableism. Understanding this intersection is really critical because policies that address only one aspect fail to capture the full scope of exclusion. And furthermore, the invisibility of the group in national data and policy discussions perpetuates that systemic neglect. So recognising these dynamics is really the first step towards creating inclusive environments that respect and protect all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or capability. So we know that across Commonwealth countries, we are LGBTQIA plus people with disability are facing those overlapping legal, social and economic harms, often driven by criminalisation, by systemic discrimination and complete erasure in either disability or LGBTQIA plus policy and practice. And I apologise for the typo. Under the CRPD, it's important to recognise that the CRPD protects all individuals with disability, regardless of the different identities that they have. All persons, including LGBTQIA plus persons, are entitled to equality and non-discrimination, to protection. And the principles apply, all of the CRPD principles apply to LGBTQIA plus persons with disabilities through inclusive interpretation. It's important that states adopt measures to protect this group of folk with disability against the increased violence, abuse and discrimination that they experience, even if those things are not explicitly stated. So what do we see? So we know that legal frameworks across the Commonwealth countries do vary widely, but many still criminalise same-sex relationships, and this creates an environment of fear and vulnerability, increased fear and vulnerability, for LGBTQIA plus persons with disability. These legal barriers intersect with inadequate disability protections, which results in more marginalisation. In some jurisdictions, there's actually no legal recognition of gender identity, which completely restricts access to essential services such as healthcare and social support. Additionally, persons with disabilities who belong to the LGBTQIA plus community will face procedural and physical barriers when seeking justice, and this dual discrimination means that LGBTQIA plus persons with disabilities are far less likely to report abuse or to seek redress or to be given access to supports to access the justice system. This perpetuates the cycles of violence and exclusion. It's also really important that we talk about social stigma. We know that that's an ongoing issue for LGBT persons with disabilities, often manifesting in both the LGBTQIA+ community and the disability community. And that dual marginalisation leads to invisibility, where individuals are excluded from advocacy efforts and community support systems. Economically, the individuals face significant barriers to education and employment, discrimination in hiring practices, lack of workplace accommodations, and limited access to vocational training, all of which are contributing to high unemployment rates. Now, I know that that's an experience for many people with disability across the Commonwealth. It's increased when we include the additional marginalisation of an LGBTQIA+ identity. So what we really need to do is to think about some targeted interventions that are promoting inclusion in education and employment and healthcare, while we're also challenging those societal attitudes that are reinforcing the stigma and discrimination. I think it's very, very important that we, especially in a time where aid programs are closing and there are a huge push around anti-DEI movements across the Commonwealth, across the globe, it's really, really important that we hold fast and make sure that all of the people within the community that are persons with disability are thought about and included, and that we push for the equal rights for all of us, not just for some. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is that LGBTQIA+ persons with disability are at a huge risk, a larger risk of physical, sexual and emotional violence. The vulnerability is exacerbated by that social isolation and dependence on caregivers, some of whom can be the perpetrators of abuse. When people from this community try to reach out to community support systems, they're often excluded, meaning that they have nowhere to turn for help. And furthermore, most national data collection systems don't capture intersectional identities, which renders these folks invisible in policy discussions and resource allocation. The lack of visibility is perpetuating a cycle where violence is going unreported and unaddressed. Advocacy organisations often focus on either or, leaving those who are at the intersection without adequate representation. So to break the cycle, we need to have some comprehensive strategies that include training for law enforcement, accessible reporting mechanisms and community support networks. It's going to be essential if we want to address the patterns of violence and create a safe and inclusive society. But some of the things that we want to see, we are encouraging Commonwealth countries to adopt inclusive and intersectional policies. For example, enacting comprehensive anti-discrimination laws that are explicitly going to protect individuals based on their sexual orientation, gender identity and disability status, not either or. We want to see education and employment policies that prioritise accessibility and inclusion for all, ensuring equal opportunities for all. We want to see healthcare systems be reformed to provide culturally competent and physically accessible services, including mental health supports that are tailored to intersectional needs. And we think that government should invest in data collection that captures the experiences of LGBT persons with disability, enabling evidence-based policy making. Continuing community awareness programs are also going to be critical for challenging the stigma and promoting acceptance. The measures, when we take them together, they can actually create environments where LGBT persons with disabilities are empowered to live with dignity and equality. It's going to require collaboration among governments, among civil society, among international organisations and community to ensure that sustained progress. But we believe that if we want to talk about true inclusion, we need to have inclusion for all, and this is a really important issue. I will hand back to Richard. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claire. And the issue of the LGBTQI plus cannot be just swept under the carpet, because we know that it is a group of people that we need to also find inclusive policies around, and that in the different Commonwealth countries that have different laws concerning the same, we need to come to a common ground where we can agree on how to make this an inclusive sector, an inclusive constituency. And because we are running out of time, I think now I'll want to call upon participants in the House to just make a comment or questions, if any, so that we can be able to address that before we conclude our celebration or our commemoration of this day. And Gemma, if there is any comment on the chat, if you can read that for us, that will be very helpful. For participants who are unable to speak up, you can write your chats. You can write on the chat box so that we can be able to see what your comments are, what your issues are, what your questions are. Thank you.
There is a message from Jebel Cisse. I'm sorry if I've not said your name correctly. Capacity to review budget for disability is very important. In the Gambia, this is what we seriously lack. I'm interested to watch the post and appeal for possible capacity building training on budget review.
That is great.
Somebody else wants to, Kenneth says, happy celebration to all of us. Please, can I get the recorded session after the programme? I think at some point we're going to put it on our website. Richard, are we sending it round to people, or is it just going on the website?
It will go on the website, but everybody who sent in that they were coming on this, I've got about 30 emails plus the executive, another 30. I'll send the link to all of them. With it will go Scader's PowerPoint, but also Patience has produced a booklet of advice, which is very useful. So both of those will go up to support the presentation as a film, which will be captioned throughout. So it may take a day or two to get it up there, but I will let everybody know when it is up. Is that
there's nothing else in the chat at the moment, but
okay.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Could I round up, Chair, with a few things?
Yeah,
right.
If there's nothing else.
I think this has been a very successful roundtable. We'd have liked a few more people here, but as I say, we're recording it so people can come to it. What we tried to do this year was to have some really informative presentations rather than all just being self-congratulatory. And I think we've had at least 3 of those which have really informed people to take their practice forward. So it's been part training and part celebration. I think that's important. We will continue in that vein. We heard from Kihembo that the youth seminars are going forward. There are another 3 or 4 that are scheduled. So if you want to be part of them, you need to get in touch with the Commonwealth Disabled Youth Forum and be on their mailing list. There's nothing to stop you joining them, and that's important. They are usually at the end of the month, their seminars. We've just had one last Friday, and I think there's going to be one before Christmas, and then 3 more in the new year. As he said, we're going to try and raise more money for more specific training projects there. We have a young women and girls in Africa project that unfortunately Gaudence was not able to explain, but that is going forward in both Nigeria and Uganda. This was a competitive selection, and we hope to be able to report working with organizations down at the grassroots on challenging violence, developing inclusive education, employment opportunities. That's an ongoing project. We have a number of other such projects that are underway. For all of you who are members of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, we will be writing shortly to all our 111 membership organizations, asking them to select their delegates for the annual General Assembly, which is a virtual affair. And those delegates are the ones who can run for positions in the elections. The majority of the executive are standing for re-election. I hope many of them are re-elected because they're doing good work, but if there's people who also want to be part of that, there's a chance there to be elected. There's also a chance for us to co-opt people after we've had our regional elections as well. So there are several ways to get involved. And I see there's a comment come up on budgets. I don't know if we've got time to talk about that, but I would just reiterate the point that we certainly would like to do more training on specific issues for everybody. And I think that some monitoring budgets was one, but there are a number of others that I think it looks like people are interested in. So I think we should organize those. But, you know, if you want training around particular issues, write into us and we'll try and arrange it over the coming year. We hope once the new executive is elected to have a face-to-face meeting of the new executive. We also hope to do another regional training, mopping up in both Southern Africa and South Asia, and a new one in West Africa in the next year. And then most importantly, we want to both be at the COSP in New York in June to advertise what we're doing, but most importantly, to have a focus in Antigua in the first week of November. So those are all dates for the calendar, but we will stay in touch with you through our newsletter, through our website, and please do communicate with us if you have issues that you want taking forward. But maybe first go to your national DPOs who are our members. This is not an organization of individual members, it is an organization of organizations, and therefore the first place to go is to be active in your organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. I think, like I said, even at the beginning, we have had a lot going on since CDPF was revived, if I can say that. And capacity building is quite key for us because we know without the right knowledge, we may not be able to advocate for the rights. So I think we'll continue having the capacity building programs and looking for funds, especially to empower and capacity build our youth who, like Kihembo rightly said, are leaders today and even tomorrow. And we as the older generation, the intergenerational discourse or intergenerational mentoring is still there. We are here to make sure that these organizations in the future are taken up by the youth of today who will then be older, and they will have wisdom and they will understand what the rights and what they need to talk about in the right manner. They understand the conventions because that is where we are heading. So we are very grateful for all of you for having participated in this roundtable. And we know it is a place where we learn more. It is a place where we understand what we don't understand, and we can share and ask questions on what we don't understand and get answers for. So thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to you joining the elections next year. We hope that we shall push the voice and the agenda of disability rights and inclusion together as one voice, and with even newer and more vibrant young people joining in the spaces of leadership in future. Thank you so much. I want to thank our captioners. I want to thank Gemma for putting us together. She's always been there at the back and doing great work. And anybody else, the sign language interpreter, she has been there throughout, and it's not easy, but she has kept it going. And Thomas has brought these clips together and any other work he was doing behind the scenes. Thank you so much, and we wish you well. If you're going for holidays, happy holidays, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.